Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive. Today we're going to explore something super important in your nursing practice. Therapeutic relationships. That connection you build with patients, it goes way beyond just like friendly chats.
Yeah, you're right. It's really a specific skill set, You can actually empower your patients.
Okay, so let's unpack that. I was reading Effective Psychotherapists, and there's this wild story about a study on alcoholism recovery. It really caught my eye. Researchers basically tricked therapists into thinking certain patients had like higher recovery potential. They called them HARPs,
Oh, yeah.
but it was all made up. A totally fake personality test.
Wow.
And guess what? The heart patients, the ones picked randomly, they actually did better.
It's a classic study, shows how powerful expectations are, even in clinical settings. What's really interesting is how it wasn't just the patients who were influenced, the therapists changed too, like subconsciously, based on what they thought the patient could achieve.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Just believing in someone can actually help them heal.
Exactly, and that leads to a really crucial point the book makes. Therapeutic relationships, they're not just about techniques or procedures, it's the qualities you, as a nurse, bring to the table.
So it's like you could have the most advanced surgical tools, but if you don't have a skilled surgeon, the outcome might not be what you hoped for. Right? It's both skill and approach.
Yeah, I like that. The book compares therapy to dancing, actually. You're working with the patient, not doing something to them. It's collaborative.
That makes so much sense. So how do we become expert dance partners with our patients? Where do we even start?
It all starts with deliberate practice. Think of training for a marathon. You wouldn't show up and just expect to win. You need to train, work on specific skills, build endurance, and refine your technique. It's the same with therapeutic relationships. You have to practice active listening, offering non-judgmental acceptance, really hone that empathy.
Let's dive into those skills. The book really emphasizes accurate empathy as kind of the foundation. But it's not just feeling sorry for someone, is it?
Right. It's about stepping into their shoes, trying to understand their world, even if you haven't lived their life. It's not just passively understanding, it's about reflecting back their feelings and thoughts in a way that helps them understand themselves better.
So you're not just listening, you're actively reflecting their experience back to them, like holding up a mirror so they can see things more clearly.
Exactly. And the book gives some great examples. Instead of asking, "Are you anxious about the surgery?" you might say, "It sounds like you're feeling anxious about the surgery." It's subtle, but it validates their feelings and lets them explore them.
That makes sense. You're not putting words in their mouth, but you're acknowledging what they are expressing, maybe even helping them articulate it, right? And this connects to non-judgmental acceptance, doesn't it? Creating that safe space where patients feel heard without judgment.
Absolutely. Acceptance isn't about, condoning actions. It's about acknowledging their autonomy, creating an environment for change.
This makes me think about something the book mentions. Theory X versus Theory Y. The idea that people are either inherently lazy, need to be controlled, or they have like untapped potential, they just need the right environment. Which view do you think leads to better outcomes in nursing?
Well, if we believe in our patients' ability to grow and heal, we're more likely to see that happen, right? Like those heart patients, the therapist's belief in them helped them get there.
That's powerful. So by approaching patients with acceptance, believing in their ability to heal, we're creating a more fertile ground for change. It's like we're planting seeds of hope.
That's a great way to put it. And that brings us to another concept, evocation.
Okay, tell me more about evocation. I'm intrigued.
So evocation, it's about bringing out the patient's inner resources, their own motivations for change. You're guiding them. Instead of telling them what to do, they discover their own path to healing.
So instead of being the expert dictating solutions, we become like facilitators, helping patients tap into their own wisdom and strength.
Exactly. You're asking the right questions, reflecting their strengths, and really truly listening to what they say and don't say. You're helping them uncover their own motivations so they own their health journey.
That sounds incredibly powerful, but also really challenging. How do we even develop those skills? It seems like it takes a deep understanding of human behavior and like motivation.
It does. It's a skill. It takes time and practice to develop, but there are things nurses can do. Instead of just giving information, you could start by asking what they know about their condition, what questions they have. It becomes a collaborative exploration instead of a lecture.
I see. You're engaging their curiosity, making them active participants in their own care.
Precisely. And after you've shared information, it's important to see how it lands. Don't just assume they get it. Ask, what are your thoughts or what's most important to you?
That makes a lot of sense. You're meeting them where they are, respecting their perspective, working together to find solutions that work for them. Not imposing our knowledge, but empowering them to make their own choices.
Absolutely. And that focus on empowerment, it's key to building trust, rapport, and that's essential for a strong therapeutic relationship.
So we've covered empathy, acceptance, and evocation, all crucial for building a foundation. But what about the other qualities? What about things like positive regard, genuineness, setting boundaries?
All super important, and we'll definitely get to those. But first, I'm curious what's resonating with you so far? What questions are popping up?
Honestly, it's how powerful these so-called soft skills are, like that HARP study, how our beliefs can really affect outcomes. It makes me wonder how we, as nurses, cultivate that belief in our patients, that unwavering belief in their ability to heal, even when things are tough.
That's a great question, and we'll definitely explore it more. It's about recognizing that spark of hope, that resilience inside each person, even when things are dark. And as nurses, we have this privilege to fan that spark, to nurture that resilience, help our patients find their own strength. It's about creating that space for healing, even when it's hard. And that brings us to positive regard. It's another key part of these relationships.
Okay, positive regard. The book describes it as like genuinely appreciating the positive in our patients, even when they're struggling. But how do we do that authentically? It can't just be empty praise, right?
You're right. It has to be genuine, specific, tied to what they do, their quality. So instead of "you're doing great," you might say, "You showed real strength asking for help today," or "I'm impressed by how you're advocating for yourself."
So noticing those little wins, those moments of courage, and reflecting them back.
Exactly. Those reflections can be so powerful. They can help patients see themselves differently, remind them what they're capable of, like a boost of confidence when they need it.
And this ties into being genuine, right? Which the book says is being ourselves, but not making it about us. That seems tricky.
Yeah, it is. Genuineness is finding that balance, being ourselves but professional, transparent but not oversharing.
So how do we handle those patient questions about us? The personal ones I've had patients ask about my family, my age, even my relationship status. It can be awkward.
It's normal to feel that way. Remember those questions. It's often them trying to connect, to build trust. The key is to gently redirect back to them and what they need.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Say a patient asks your age. Instead of answering, you could say, "I understand you want to know. I have the experience to help you. Let me share a bit about my background and training." See, you address it without making it about you.
That's good. Addresses it, but stays focused on their care. And I bet genuineness also helps when we have to be honest, give tough information or advice.
Absolutely. And speaking of advice, the book talks about psychological reactance. Have you heard of that?
Not sure. Tell me more.
It's this thing where people naturally resist being told what to do, even if it's good advice for their own good.
Oh, yeah. Like, tell me to do it and I'll do the opposite.
Right, like a defense mechanism to protect our freedom of choice. We have to be aware of that as nurses, especially in this setting.
So how do we avoid triggering that resistance?
The book suggests collaborating more, shifting from dictating to guiding. So not "you should do this," while empowering them to explore options, make their own choices.
Facilitating their decisions, not imposing our solutions.
Exactly. And there are ways to do that well. For example, instead of a lecture about a medication, you could ask, "Would you be open to hearing about options that have helped others?"
Subtle but important. You're offering, inviting them to consider it.
Exactly. And then check in, see how it lands. Don't assume they understand everything. Ask, "What are your thoughts on that?" or "What stands out to you?" You keep them engaged, tailor the info to what they need.
It's all about respecting their autonomy. Even when giving guidance, empowering them to make choices that feel right for them. This goes back to evocation, drawing out their wisdom, not imposing ours.
You're making great connections. It shows how all these parts of therapeutic relationships they work together create a better experience for the patient. More healing, more empowering.
Makes me think about setting boundaries too. How do we balance being empathetic, supportive, but also maintaining those professional lines?
That's a great question. A lot of nurses struggle with it. It's natural to want to help. But we're not their friends, not their therapists. We have a role, and boundaries protect us both.
So how do we set them clearly, respectfully, without seeming cold? It's about warmth, but also professionalism, right?
It is. Being friendly, but keeping that professional distance. And it's not just what we say, it's nonverbal too. Our body language, eye contact, tone of voice. All of it conveys those boundaries.
So being mindful of how we present ourselves, even in little interactions.
Absolutely. And sometimes setting boundaries means saying no or redirecting. Like if a patient asks for personal stuff you're not comfy sharing, politely decline. Bring the conversation back to them.
Being assertive but compassionate, not getting steamrolled, but not shutting them down either.
Exactly. It's a dance, but worth learning because good boundaries make a safer, more therapeutic space for everyone.
I'm really starting to see how complex these relationships are. It's not just being nice, it's a whole set of skills, qualities connecting with patients deeply, empowering them.
You're getting it. And all these pieces, empathy, positive regard, boundaries, guidance, they all build a space where patients feel seen, heard, supported.
I'm also curious about hope. We talked about how our beliefs affect patients, But how do we actively cultivate hope, especially when things are tough for them, diagnoses, setbacks?
That's a great question. Hope is so powerful for healing, and as nurses, we can nurture that, but not by giving false hope, not minimizing. It's about helping them find those little glimmers of light reasons to keep going, even when it's dark.
So acknowledging reality, but also helping them see possibilities, potential for growth.
Yes, and sometimes it's shifting focus from what's lost to what remains, what they're still capable of, celebrating those small victories, their resilience, reminding them they're not alone.
It's helping them tap into their own strength, even when they feel they have none. Reminding them there's always hope.
Beautifully put, and sometimes that hope comes from knowing someone believes in them, sees their worth, even when they can't see it themselves.
It's holding that space for them, even when it's hard. This makes me think about goal setting. How do we work with them to make goals that are meaningful, achievable, especially when they're feeling overwhelmed?
Collaborative goal setting is so important. It's a partnership, figuring out what matters to them, what they want, and the steps they're willing to take. Not telling them what to do, but empowering them to own their journey, make choices that fit their values.
Finding that balance between what's medically necessary and what's meaningful to them.
Yes, and it takes open communication, really listening, being willing to adjust. Sometimes their initial goals aren't realistic, and we have to gently guide them towards something that works better right now.
So being realistic, but hopeful. Not setting the bar too low, but not setting them up for failure either.
Exactly, and it's not a one-time thing. It's ongoing, revisiting and adjusting as things change.
So being flexible, knowing that healing isn't always a straight line. This reminds me of another challenge, ambivalence. How do we help patients who have mixed feelings about change, even when it's good for them?
Another great question. Every nurse deals with this. Ambivalence is normal, part of change. We have to be compassionate, understanding, not arguing or pressuring, but creating a space where they can safely explore those feelings.
Acknowledging and validating, not pushing it away.
Exactly, helping them see that it's okay to feel that way, conflicted, even about positive change.
So not convincing them, but listening, reflecting them weigh things out.
You're getting it, and sometimes the best thing is to just be there with them in that ambivalence. No judgment, no pressure, just a listening ear, support. That can make a huge difference.
Patience is key then in giving them time space to process, decide for themselves.
Absolutely, and sometimes it means letting go of our ideas, trusting they'll make the right choice for them, even if it's not what we'd chose.
Surrendering to the process. We can't force change. We can only help it along. And sometimes that means being present, supportive, letting them lead.
Beautifully said. And remember, even with ambivalence, there's always hope. The possibility that they'll find clarity, make choices that fit their values and goals.
I appreciate how deep these conversations are getting. Therapeutic relationships are so much more than just a soft skill. They're fundamental to good care, to empowering care.
Couldn't agree more. As we wrap up this part, I'm struck by how connected everything is. Empathy, acceptance, evocation, positive regard, genuineness, boundaries, hope, goal setting, all weaving together for healing and empowerment.
It is like a dance. Each step builds on the last, more harmony, more fulfillment for both the patient and the nurse. And you keep mentioning mindfulness. It's not just what we do, it's how we do it, that intention, that presence.
You're so right. Mindfulness is essential for empathy, compassion, presence, being fully in the moment with ourselves and the patient.
This makes me think about clinical training, continuing education. It's not just the technical stuff, it's these human qualities that really make a difference.
Absolutely. Training is vital for our skills and knowledge. But we also need to grow personally and professionally, go beyond the textbook.
Nurturing our own curiosity, compassion, we're all lifelong learners.
Beautifully said. And find those mentors, role models, people who embody what we want to be.
This has been so insightful. I have a whole new understanding of these relationships, their power, their complexity.
I'm so glad, and I hope our listeners are feeling inspired to keep exploring this and use it in their work.
I'm sure they are. So what are some key things you want them to think about as they keep learning and growing?
First, remember, this isn't a luxury. It's essential, not something extra. It's part of good patient care.
Weaving it into every interaction, big or small.
Exactly, and it takes time. Practice. Don't get discouraged if it's not perfect right away. Be patient with yourself, kind to yourself, trust the process.
Embrace the journey. We're all works in progress, becoming better healers.
Exactly, and you're not alone. Reach out to colleagues, mentors, supervisors, get support, share experiences, learn from each other.
Building a community, a network of support.
You got it. And finally, remember the impact you have. Never underestimate a kind word, a listening ear. That connection, you make a difference, one interaction at a time.
What a reminder. We're not just treating illnesses. We're caring for people who need our compassion, our understanding, and our belief in their ability to heal.
So well said. And I think we've covered a lot today.
We have such a rich conversation. I'm inspired, energized to keep learning and using these ideas.
I'm glad to hear it, and I think our listeners are feeling it too.
As we wrap up this deep dive into therapeutic relationships, is there anything else you'd like to highlight for our listeners?
You mentioning wrapping up makes me think about how we as nurses handle those last interactions with patients when they're leaving our care. How do we make those final moments meaningful? Really supportive.
That's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in the discharge planning and forget about, like, the emotional side of saying goodbye, especially if they've been with us for a while.
Yeah, exactly. And those last moments can be powerful, a chance to, reinforce their progress, acknowledge how resilient they've been, and give them hope for what's next.
So it's more than just, like, handing them papers and saying good luck.
Way more. It's taking time to really connect, let them know we see them, hear them, and believe they can thrive even after they leave.
Any tips on making those final interactions more meaningful?
I always try to just ask how they're feeling about leaving. It gives them a chance to, talk about any anxieties, worries they have, and then we can address those with compassion.
So acknowledging that leaving can be tough, even if it's a positive step.
Right. Validating those feelings. It's okay to have mixed emotions. You could say something like, it sounds like you're excited, but also maybe a little nervous about managing on your own. Am I right?
So they feel heard, understood. That can make a big difference.
It does. And then after you've acknowledged their feelings, you can shift to their strength, what they've accomplished. You could say, you've come such a long way. I'm really impressed with how determined you've been.
Reminding them of the progress, even if there are still challenges.
Exactly. And let them know you believe they can keep growing. I have no doubt you'll continue to do well. You've got the tools and resources you need.
It's like giving them seeds of hope, encouragement to carry with them.
That's a great way to put it. Leave them feeling empowered, knowing they're strong, resilient, ready for whatever comes next.
These final interactions are like an extension of the whole therapeutic relationship we've built.
Precisely. They solidify that connection, those feelings of trust and support. You leave a positive mark on their journey.
This has been such a great deep dive. I feel like I have a much deeper understanding of how powerful these relationships are for nurses.
That's wonderful to hear. I hope our listeners are feeling inspired to use these ideas in their own practice. Even small changes can make a big difference.
It's those little moments of connection, those acts of kindness and compassion that can have a ripple effect. Everyone benefits.
So true. Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive for today.
Thank you so much for sharing all this. This conversation has been so valuable.
It's been my pleasure. And to our listener, I wish you all the best as you continue to learn and grow. Create those meaningful, transformative relationships with your patients.
And until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep believing in the power of connection. It really can heal and inspire.